This is the Para Cave Podcast, proudly brought to you by major sponsor Jack's Pale Ale, exclusively available at Parramatta Leagues Club, and co-sponsors Bo Cook from Loan Market, Scott from Brightside Detailing and Ceramics, Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty, BTZD Clothing, the official clothing partner of the Para Cave Podcast, and the official media partner of the Para Cave Podcast, the Parramatta Times.
Welcome to another episode of the Para Cave Podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Para Cave.
Yes, welcome back, listeners, to the Para Cave Podcast. Troy here once again, and this week it is the Round 11 Tipping Podcast. So the team lists have just come out for Round 11 this week. Some cracking games this week. Storm Broncos, Panthers Roosters, old rivals Rabbitohs and the West Tigers. My Parramatta Eels take on the Canberra Raiders down there in the nation's capital, and the Sea Eagles and Sharks with the Dolphins having the bye. But before we get started into that, I just wanted to say a massive shout out to and thank you to the listeners that I caught up with up in Brisbane for Magic Round. It was great to see so many faces up there, and I really appreciate the support, and thank you very much for listening. I hope to get up there again next year for Magic Round, as it is one of the best weekends that you will ever have when rugby league is being played. So thank you once again for coming up and saying a good day and having a chat, and I really appreciate the feedback, so thank you very much for that. And also, don't forget that if you missed out on getting a Para Cave Podcast hat, then you can get one via the social media channels or by emailing the podcast at theparacavepodcast@yahoo.com, and order one now, and I'll get that out to you as soon as possible. Only $15 for one of those Para Cave Podcast hats. Anyway, on to this week's games, and it kicks off on Thursday night, 7:50pm, Storm vs Broncos, two traditional rivals. Should be a cracking game down there at Amy Park in Melbourne. Now, you would like to think that the Storm would be favourites in this game, which they are, but they are in sixth position at the moment. The Broncos on top of the table, flying high up there. So let's have a look at these sides. Now, two very competitive sides. The back lines of each side are pretty damn good at the moment. Reece Walsh there at the fullback, he is going great guns, pushing for that origin berth for Queensland. He wants that game one, number one spot. Herbie Farnworth in the centres as well has been on fire, and Selwyn Cobbo as well on the wing there, no doubt looking for a Queensland origin spot as well. Scored a hat-trick last week in Magic Round, so some very talented players there. On the other side, Xavier Coates playing up against his old club on the wing there, so that'll be interesting to see. Players always love playing against their old clubs, and Justin Olam in the centres, well, geez, he can certainly be that great defensive centre there, can pull off some massive hits. And of course, Cameron Munster at the 5'8" spot. The forwards for both sides, Payne Haas up against Christian Welsh, that'll be an interesting battle. Harry Grant versus Billy Walters, and so a pretty sort of even forward pack there. And look, I think I'm going to tip the Storm in this one, only because it's probably down there in Melbourne. They've got a pretty good record down there in front of their home fans. But look, this will be probably a 1-12 game, I think. So the Storm to get that one. Now, moving forward to the first game on Friday night, which is the Bulldogs versus the Warriors, played at Accor Stadium in Sydney. Now, the Warriors 11th position, the Bulldogs in 15th. The Bulldogs coming off a 4-point loss to the Canberra Raiders last week in Magic Round, and also the Warriors losing to the Penrith Panthers. So both teams last start losers, so they'll be looking to get a win in this game. Now, the interesting call here is that Josh Addo-Carr is back from injury, which is he probably has come back even more quicker than expected before. It looked like he was going to be out for a longer period than what he was, but he is back on that wing for Canterbury, and he is looking to push for a origin spot as well on the wing. So he's got a couple of weeks there to impress Freddie and the selectors there at New South Wales. So hopefully we see the best of Josh in his comeback game. Look, the Warriors, no real changes in their side. A couple of outs for them. I think this will be an interesting game because probably sort of two evenly matched sides, I would say, at the moment, despite their positions on the ladder. I'm going to tip Canterbury Bankstown in this one. I think they may just get the win. Again, this will probably maybe be a 1-12 game, so I'm going to tip the Bulldogs in that one. Now, to the second game on Friday night, which is the Panthers at home to the Roosters, the Sydney Roosters. A replay of the 2003 Grand Final, and what a cracker night and cracker game that was, the 2003 Grand Final. We all remember that Scott Sattler tackle on Todd Byrne. That was the moment of the Grand Final, even though as humble as Scotty Sattler is, that to him that wasn't the moment of the Grand Final, but yeah, that's just Scotty Sattler, champion, legend, and that was a legendary tackle. So Penrith back at home. They got the win last week against the Warriors, and look, that they've sort of struggled a little bit this year. They haven't really set the world on fire, but they're coming in third position, but they're just winning games. And Dylan Edwards at the fullback position, he has been outstanding. He could be a smoky for the State of Origin team. He'll be up against James Tedesco, who is obviously the New South Wales captain, New South Wales fullback. So, interesting clash there between those two. The halves as well for Penrith and the Roosters will probably determine who wins the game. You got Jerome Luai and Nathan Cleary, obviously, for Penrith, and Joseph Manu and Luke Keary for the Roosters. The Roosters struggled a little bit last week against the Cowboys. They were never in the game up there in Brisbane. They struggled. They got a late consolation try, you could say. So, look, this is going to be a really interesting game. There should be a massive crowd out there at Penrith Stadium. Now, number 21 for the Panthers has been named Liam Martin, who's been out for a couple of weeks now. So, maybe, just maybe, he may get a start on Friday night. Not too sure where, but he may get a start on the reserves bench coming back from injury. Now, the last time these two teams played, it was 26-18 to the Panthers, and the time before that, it was 32-12 to the Panthers as well. So the Panthers got a little bit of a a winning way against the Roosters at the moment. I'm going to stick with that at Penrith. I call it Penrith Stadium, Penrith Park, but it is known as Bluebet Stadium. So I'm going to go the Panthers. They are favourites in this game. 3rd versus 8th, but it should be a cracker of a match. The first game on Saturday afternoon, 3 p.m, is again at Accor Stadium, the old Olympic Stadium. So, 2 traditional rivals here. The Rabbitohs up against the Tigers, the West Tigers. 2nd versus 17th. It should be an interesting game. South Sydney are really putting together some great games and some great victories to slowly climb up that ladder to 2nd position. So they've been a little bit of a quiet achiever there, just winning their games and climbing up that ladder, and now in 2nd position. The Tigers, they've won their last 2 games, so they've got a little bit of confidence about them. They've played the Dragons and they beat the Premiers, Penrith, as well, 12-8. So they've got a little bit of confidence about them, but I think it's going to be hard to stop Latrell Mitchell, Cody Walker, those sort of guys, Cameron Murray at lock. So, look, I think the Rabbitohs will continue on their winning way and get this game over the Tigers. But don't be surprised if the Tigers give the Rabbitohs a really good run for their money. So, just with that confidence that they have at the moment of winning their last 2 games. John Bateman has been named in the 2nd row, so that's a big in for the Tigers. He was named to play last week, although he had a late withdrawal, so he missed the Magic Round win, but he is back this week, and we all still wait for Alex Twal and his first ever NRL try. So will it be this week versus the Rabbitohs? Who knows, but I'm going to tip the Rabbitohs in this game. The second game on Saturday night, 5:30 p.m, is up at Queensland Country Bank Stadium, up in Townsville. So that means it is the Cowboys taking on the Dragons. Now, interesting a bit about this one is that the Dragons, obviously up there in Brisbane last week for Magic Round, have actually stayed up in Queensland this week. And for this clash against the Cowboys, 14th versus 16th at the moment. Ben Hunt's 300th game in the NRL, so congratulations to Ben on reaching that milestone. He is, I think, the 47th player to reach that 300 game mark. So played obviously with the Broncos and now the St George Illawarra Dragons. So congratulations, Ben, on that. Massive achievement. So the Dragons players, they'll be wanting to get this win for Ben, a milestone game, and we generally see in milestone games those teams sort of step up, so that player celebrating that milestone gets the victory. So a special occasion for Ben. Good that it's probably played up in Queensland as well. Potentially a lot of family will be there for that game up in Townsville. The Cowboys, they haven't really set the world on fire this year, but they did get a great win against the Roosters last week. So only the 1 try scored against them. So they look like they were getting back to that defensive sort of team that they were in 2022. So that's what they really worked on last season, and that's what they were known for, was their defence as well. So last week that definitely showed as well against the Roosters. So no doubt that'll be on show again. So coming in towards that Origin time, you know, you've got your Queenslanders and you've got your New South Welshmen trying to impress the selectors. So you've got the likes of Valentine Holmes, Murray Tuilagi, Tommy Dearden, Reece Robson as well, potential New South Wales hooker. So Ruben Cotter, obviously Queenslander. So you've got those few little players there in the Cowboys side that are just trying to push for that Origin spot. So be an interesting game, this one. Coach Anthony Griffin, he is under a lot of pressure at St George, so no doubt if that pressure will continue if the Dragons lose this game. So obviously, as I said before, the players will want to win for Benny Hunt in his 300th game, but I can't see the Dragons winning this one. I think last week's win against the Roosters will give the Cowboys a lot of confidence, and I think they'll get the win in this one, so I'll tip the Cowboys. Now, the last game on Saturday night, 7:35pm, sees the Canberra Raiders up against my Parramatta Eels down there at GIO Stadium in Canberra. The Raiders last start winners against the Bulldogs. The Eels last start losers against the Gold Coast Titans. And the big out for Parramatta is Mitchell Moses, who is serving that 11-day stand-down period for a Category 1 concussion that he suffered late in the game last week against the Titans. So a big out there. Jake Arthur comes in to replace him at halfback. So that was probably the obvious move and change that was going to be made this week with Mitchell being out. It's probably a smart thing, bringing in a halfback for a halfback instead of shifting your captain Clint Gutherson to 5'8" and maybe Dylan Brown to halfback. So it's probably a smart move there. Just bring in Jake. He played a bit there last year. Whilst Mitchell was out a couple of times last year, so he knows the plays, he knows the club, he knows the players, so yeah, probably a smart move there. Interestingly, Andrew Davey has retained his spot at second row. Now, for myself, I would have put Bryce Cartwright into that second row spot. He's been playing some really good football this year in different games, and potentially maybe even Matt Dury might have been another one who could have got a spot in that back row, or potentially Ryan Madison go into the starting lineup and Dury go onto the bench. But Andrew Davey, he's retained his spot in that second row position, so it'll be interesting to see how he goes. Now, we know that the Canberra Raiders, they can score a lot of points. A couple of games there scored 30 points in each game, so they'll be confident playing at home. And Jared Croker, the captain, he has been pretty good since he's come back from injury, back into that starting centre position as captain. So he is looking towards also that 300 game mark. So he may be the 48th player to get that 300 games. So we wish him well in that quest, but he has been playing some really good football as well. Obviously, the contract saga with Jack Whiten is behind him now. He's signed with South Sydney, so he obviously that's off his mind now. So it's all about just playing football this season for Canberra. So that'll be a plus for Canberra. Big battle between Josh Papali'i and his old Canberra teammate Junior Paolo will be a good one to see. Hudson Young and Sean Lane on the edges, that'll be a good one to see as well. So there's Corey Horsburgh as well. He's pushing for a Queensland Origin spot. He could be a smoky to get into that Origin squad. Look, if he's not in the 17, he'll be definitely in that squad somewhere, maybe the 30-man squad or whatever. So he'll be in and around there. So look, my heart says Parramatta. I think with Mitchell Moses being out, it's going to be a really tough game down there in Canberra. I'm going to go Canberra in this game. I know you'll all be surprised about that one, but I'm going to go Canberra in this game. As I said, Mitchell Moses being out, no disrespect to Jake Arthur, he's a good player, but he isn't Mitchell Moses, and it's going to be tough for Parramatta to go down there. We don't have the best record down in Canberra, although I think we have won the last 2 games against Canberra in Canberra. We beat the Raiders in the finals last year, and then we got them down there in Canberra 28-20. So it'll be interesting. The Canberra Raiders in a bit of a rich vein of form at the moment, winning their last 4 games. So they are in a rich vein of form, and they find themselves in 9th position and favourites in this game. I'm going to go the Canberra Raiders. My heart says Para, but my head says Canberra. Now, moving on to Sunday, the Knights and the Titans. This is up at McDonald Jones Stadium in Newcastle. 12th versus 7th. Look, this could go either way. There's not much probably between these two sides. But, Kalen Ponga pushing for an origin spot as well, probably at fullback, even though he's playing 5'8". So he's got a few games under his belt now since returning from those concussion issues and that trip to Canada. So he's got a few games under his belt now. So hopefully that confidence is gaining that confidence. Having Jackson Hastings in at halfback as well, he's controlling the team really well. Adam Elliott returns as well from injury, so that's a good in for the Newcastle Knights. Last week, the Titans, pretty impressive against the Eels. Kieran Foran scored a double, could have been a triple, but wasn't to be. But he was in a rich vein of form, and 2 tries last week. So Jaden Campbell replacing the injured AJ Brimson in the fullback position. So it's the same team as last week. So when you start to have the same teams week in, week out, that probably makes it a little bit easier as well. So this should be an interesting game. Look, I'm going to sway towards the Newcastle Knights only because it's at home. And I think, look, the Titans have had 2 big wins, and Newcastle, I think, at home will get the job done here, but only just. And the last game to round out round 11 is the Sea Eagles and the Sharks, 4:05 p.m. at 4 Pines Park. 10th versus 4th, both last start losers. So, again, the Battle of the Beaches, I think they call this one. Manly versus Cronulla, the Battle of the Beaches. So, who's going to come out on top of this one? The Cronulla Sharks, well, they seem to get their pants pulled down by the Dolphins last week up there in Magic Round. So, they'll be wanting to get back into that winner's circle. But the Manly Sea Eagles, well, they've had a little bit of dramas over the last couple of weeks. Josh Schuster has been named on an extended bench. Not too sure if he will play. It's only Tuesday at the moment, so it's a long way till Sunday. I think they said he's got a fitness test on Thursday, and we'll see if he cracks it for a bench spot at best, I think. So, look, Dale Finucane's back. This should be Tom Trbojevic. He will be trying to maybe push his way into the New South Wales side. I think maybe he might be struggling a little bit with not so much injury, but just confidence about those injuries that he's had previously. So I think being back at home will make you feel a little bit more comfortable. I just think, though, that the Cronulla Sharks will get this win. So, against the Sea Eagles to stay pretty much solidly in that top 4. So, just recapping, my tips for the week will be the Storm, the Bulldogs, the Panthers, the Rabbitohs, the Cowboys, the Raiders, the Knights, and Sea Eagles. So, if anybody listening can tell me what the coincidental thing is about that one, please let me know. Comment on the podcast platform that you listen to. And, of course, the bye goes to the Dolphins. So that's their first bye for the competition, and apparently they are up in the Northern Territory training and also doing some work in the community as well. So great stuff there from the Dolphins on their week off. So as we look at the ladder now, the top 8, the Brisbane Broncos, Rabbitohs, Panthers, Sharks, Dolphins, Storm, Titans, Roosters. Just out of the 8 on for and against is the Raiders, and bringing up the rear of the competition is the Dragons and Tigers. So enjoy your weekend of footy. Now, as I said, just a fan's opinion, not an expert's opinion. So hope you enjoy your weekend of footy and happy tipping.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Paracave Podcast.